Do you wanna hear a joke?
Yeah.
Before we get this going.
Sure.
My wife. It's hard to say what she does. She sells seashells on the seashore.
Well, that's it then.
And welcome to the JPOD. I want to say 1.6.
Don't hit the table.
Right?
It sounds so loud. And now I think
there's a massive spike in the audio there.
I think we're on 7. You know,
are we on 7?
I feel like I've written 6 down before.
This has been a wild ride, guys.
It has.
I think before we get started, I think I want to point out that Joe is going interrailing around Italy like the cultured.
Stop!
Like the cultured.
They're going to know exactly where I live eventually.
So the the continuity of the JPOD may take a slight hit.
Episode 6, you're completely right.
Episode 6.
Yeah.
There we go. Look at that. As 2 times 3 is 6, so that's quite a lot.
More than
but
5.
we are, rest assured to our loyal fans, we are going to carry on doing this because we both enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
No, he doesn't enjoy it. He's just
we love it.
We love
we
it.
love it. No, honestly, we do. We'll try and Discord it. The audio quality may flop again.
Not like the first episode where I sound like a toaster oven.
Almost there.
Almost there. So, what we're here to talk about today isn't just your interrailing trips around Germany, around Italy, and some horrendous jokes. It's horror movies. Now, horror movies are quite a big part of both of our lives.
Yeah, I just watched one.
We both just watched one. We both watched Hereditary. It's not your kind of hegemonic, stereotypical, archetypal horror film. It's very psychological.
Any more long words for us?
It's
photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis.
There's one.
I just rattle off things that are 3 syllables in hopes that the people that watch this think or listen to this think I'm, educated.
Is it watching? Are you just watching like a still frame? Because I try my best in the edits to
it's a video.
Visual stimulation. But
you did a great job with the sci-fi one.
Yeah, that's it though. That's the most effort I put
still
into
didn't know what I was talking about the Martian.
We'll never know.
It was great.
We'll never know what it is. Jeez, Louise. All right, well, let's get into it.
So, Hereditary, how did you think of it? What do you think?
How did I think of it? I liked it. It was subverted expectations, which is what I love in a horror film. It constantly did that to me. It tripped me many times. I was bracing for impact on every single little sort of
It keeps
camera
you guessing.
Pan.
Camera work is a good thing to point out in that film.
It was excellent.
Majestic. It's got a house style of being in a dollhouse.
Yeah, and every single shot, like it felt like the house wasn't a house. They didn't film inside a house. They filmed inside the set they built.
Yes,
and they were outside of the house filming in, which is just
in that way it's quite meta, but in quite a good way. But
you do have to distance yourself from the characters because that's what most horror films do. They try and get you engrossed, and they try and get you to empathize, feel with the characters. That distancing effect is still terrified.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how they pulled it off. And maybe it is because of the distance, and you're like, oh, what the hell? Get me back in. I feel uncomfortable.
It is impressive.
You're out of your comfort zone, which you're used to with horror films. Yeah. And it was brilliant. Really enjoyed it.
Good. It's the second time that I've seen it. It's just as horrible with Spider-Man.
This podcast, as all of our podcasts, will contain spoilers for many films. We'll try and say the name of the film first.
Yes.
And then spoil it instead of just going, oh yeah, Sean Bean dies.
Which he probably does. If you're watching a film with Sean Bean in it, it's probably likely he's gone.
Even Pixels, he dies.
Is he in Pixels?
He's in Pixels.
With Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
The Pac-Man in that film looks great, doesn't it?
And with bites off his commander's hand.
Absolutely.
Commanders? Creators.
I like the idea of Pixels.
Anyway.
Just pretend you're the guy.
Sidetracked, aren't we?
Adam Sandler is what we wanted to talk about. You mentioned there is that horror films. What, Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
What?
No.
This has been a rocky start. It's been a rocky 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Yes, not related to horror films in whatsoever. We're getting some
special guests.
Special guests.
No, I'm not coming down.
Come on, you can do this.
Special guest opinion.
Shout the point. She's been giving us a good point.
They killed the character that you think is going to be the main character straight away in the film, and then for the rest of the film you think the main character is the mum, and it's not the mum, and even the mum believes she's the main character, and she's like, oh, well, it's me, I'm the medium, it's coming through me, I have to burn the book, and I have to do this, and she's not the main character. It just keeps subverting everything you believe and think about horror and normal films throughout the entire film. To the point
There's
of
nothing
where,
to make you feel comfortable at all.
Yeah,
and then
it
it comes
creates
back
the
all the way to
uncertainty.
the end, and Charlie is the main character.
Peter,
That was a very astute point come from the heavens there.
Thank you.
you can now recede to your cloud.
It was
heaven.
very good. Katie, who that was, oh god, they're just finding more people out. It's
No
Katie's.
names, no surnames.
It's
That's just some random woman who walked in. There we go.
that is an absolutely random. That's Ceiling Mum from the roof.
That's Ceiling Mum.
She's
Thank you, Ceiling
she's not on this podcast. We love her, but she
Actually,
is.
Easter egg, throwback to episode 1. You might be able to hear her voice.
Yeah, well,
the
go
background.
find that if you're a true fan. Yeah.
Been here since the OG.
She's very good with horror films, in all seriousness. She knows the conventions and the codes.
Who are we
really
talking
well.
about now?
Katie.
Oh, still talking about Ceiling Mum.
She knows the conventions and the codes very well, and a lot of the things, as you just mentioned, like Hereditary, it helps. It helps, and a lot of these points probably are, born out of her ideas. So credit to you. There you go. She said thank you. Now that's the guest. The guest
Sucking off for the guests. Let's move
that's
on.
the special guest section of the podcast done.
Next week we'll have Daniel Radcliffe giving us his opinion on his role in Woman in Black.
We're not talking about Woman in Black.
We're
Just
not.
very quickly about Woman in Black. When
Brilliant
I was
film,
in year
brilliant book,
11,
brilliant play.
when I was in year 11, no, not year 11, that makes me sound like such a pussy. In year 7, I watched that at the cinema on the front row with 2 of my friends, and I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. And now we're just going to leave it at that because I don't want to talk about it anymore. It's still
Good film,
me.
I wish we could, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's move on. I want to talk about franchises, horror franchises,
He
and
wants
how
to
you
talk
keep
about them.
the franchises going.
Yes.
Because it's something that there are horror series, there are horror series of films, like Paranormal Activity, Insidious, which we're going to talk about, and they,
Scary movie.
yeah, arguably they're not all terrifying, and like even for the Insidious films, which I think are some of the best horror films in existence, the last 2 flopped a little.
Is that the one with the dude in the gas tank in the 4th one?
They do lots of crazy stuff, yeah.
It's quite a strange one. The Last Key.
Last Key is just a dodge.
Yeah.
The weird hand key monster. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
It unlocks the throat.
I'll concede I don't necessarily enjoy the Insidious films as much as you do, but you have convinced me that they have, merit. James Wan is a good producer. We're talking about franchises. I think it's quite easy to look at things like the Insidious films and I've actually not seen The Nun. Like the Insidious films, Annabelle, The Conjuring.
The Conjuring series.
The Conjuring.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, is it a universe? I guess it is a universe.
So The
Of course
Nun
it is.
and all the Annabelle films.
Yeah,
spawned
so
from
all
that.
them you can look at them as a franchise.
You haven't seen The
right?
Nun?
I've not seen
Oh, The Nun is brilliant. Spoilers.
Is it really?
I'm going to spoil it for you now as well. At one point, she spits the blood of Christ into the demon's face.
Brilliant.
It's incredible. And there's all this like Latin chanting throughout it. It's all set in this creepy ass monastery. It's an amazing film. It's an amazing film.
Okay.
It's got Valak, the nun demon,
That's the
in
Nun
it.
demon as well.
And I thought that was probably the strongest demon in all of those films.
They're scary.
Annabelle's not scary. I've never been creeped out by
Have you
any
seen
of
Annabelle
those films.
Creation?
The new one.
The one where the kid.
Oh,
gets
Annabelle Comes
mowed-
Home is the new one, isn't it? It's just come out in cinemas now. Apparently
Yeah,
it's really scary.
the one with the kid that gets mowed down at the start. See, now that's not great. That film.
No. Oh, is that when they break into the house really weirdly? At the beginning, it starts in like the 1970s.
I don't think.
Weird. They're weird. The
I feel
Conjuring
like
films
we
are
should
weird.
research this a lot more.
Well, we won't
They
talk about
are-
Conjuring.
But what I was getting at is you can look at them as a franchise, and as we were mentioning, a franchise, and it's that kind of James Wan, influence, and you see it with a lot of his films. The camera work in them, technicality-wise, is no matter how weak a script may be, for example, The Conjuring 2, or how weak kind of the flow of a film may be, technically, they are always very proficient.
My favourite thing about a James Wan film is he tries his hardest in every single film to use images and shadow to create these, even when they're not the shapes of humans or the shapes of creatures, to play on the mind and make the mind sort of give meaning to shapes in darkness. So throughout Insidious 1 and 2, you'll see various lampshades or paintings where you just see the silhouette of something and someone. And all throughout the film, he does this brilliantly. Right up until when the demons are also on screen, you still see things. And he does it so obviously in a couple of scenes where there's this little boy like hiding in the corner of the room, and you don't see him the first time the camera goes past, and he hides, hiding in plain sight, stuff like that, because it's the unnerving that really
keeps you on your
mind.
toes.
Yeah,
it's not
never stops.
It's like in Hereditary, as we were talking about earlier on. There's a shot where it's a completely normal kind of. I'd say it's a wide shot of a boy in bed, or he's in bed. And in the top left of the screen, it's a very dark frame. It's a very kind of, it's a very shadowed frame.
You see ceiling mom.
And you see ceiling mom just perched in the corner. And you don't notice for the first 5 seconds of the shot, but it lets you linger. And it's that thing of, it's the most important rule of storytelling is show, don't tell.
Yeah.
And by keeping that, your mind goes, okay, this isn't a significant shot without something that I've not seen.
Yeah.
So you look around and then you horrify yourself.
It's like in the real world, your eyes take a while to get accustomed to the dark.
Yes.
You're doing that with a shot, and the light level
is that coat on the back of your door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the relief, but the relief doesn't come in these shots. Same with all of the Insidious films where you go, oh, no crap, that is a demon, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I love them. Also, talked a lot about lighting and sound and camera, but sound is such an important thing, especially for Insidious. The opening title, I was so devastated the last key didn't have it. But the opening title for most Insidious films always has a with the big Insidious.
You can sound like that for the JPOD.
You can
for the JPOD soundboard.
It's in production. But not only that, but like the really weird sort of, I guess it is instrumental, just like a single note being played on a violin. Yeah. Just to really intensify the suspense and the
it's unease. It's unease.
Unease is the word. Yeah.
I
setting as well. I think there are so many factors that add to a great
horror allows kind of a setting to really come into its own. You mentioned there The Nun. I've not seen it, but the idea of it being in a monastery, that is something by itself that is terrifying. Me and Joe
it's
have
actually not a monastery, it's for monks. It is an
abbot.
That's the name of a human being.
Oh God, it is an abbey. That's what I mean.
Abbey. I think
we've been to an abbey, me and Joe, with each other. Fountains Abbey.
You're
getting closer.
We're triangulating. We're somewhere between Meadowhall and Fountains. There's quite a distance, to be fair.
No, that is quite a distance.
We should be alright.
You got a while yet, guys.
No, well, I really like films which don't use a classically creepy setting. So all the Insidious films do. All the houses are big, filled with shadows and
hegemonic.
It's
hegemonic.
Say it again. Maybe people will believe.
Yeah, maybe people will really. It's a real word.
But I'm trying to think of an example of a non-creepy horror film. Like the Midsommar, the new film that's coming out. It's a daylight horror film.
That's
all
fascinating.
In the sun, and that's going to be interesting to see how well they pull that off. Same with A Quiet Place. They have horror scenes in A Quiet Place where it's daylight. They're walking along a nice sunny day by a bridge, and it's just because you know what's coming. It terrifies you.
Suspense, and I think a lot of horror films rely on the classic jump scare, and that's something that every time you watch a horror film, you don't necessarily want to be caught out by, obviously, because it's a jump scare.
Well, Hereditary
it feels
one.
Cheap. It had
brilliant.
It had one, and it was earned. It's the same with Haunting of Hill House, the Netflix series. There's not that many in it. There's a few. There are a few, but oh my God, if you've seen it, you'll know the one in the car in episode 8, I think it is. That's earned that, and it comes out of absolutely nothing. And I personally, I screamed at that. It's horrifying. Exactly.
It's very disturbing.
Just quickly about camera work as well. In Hill House, there's I think it was an article that we found, and it had that there was ghosts in almost every scene of them going back to the house. Or the flashback, to the house. There's a ghost in every scene, but they're not threatening. They are sometimes just in daylight, and they're there, and it's more of a sense of world building rather than it is creeps. Yeah, it's a sense of presence.
You don't have
to be reminded this is a horror, but you don't have to think it's a horror because you don't have to have a jump scare to think it's a horror.
There's an episode of Haunting where it's set in the morgue, not morgue, the
The
funeral home slash.
I was going to mention this.
What's it called where they prepare the bodies?
Weird embalming studio.
Yeah, the embalming studio.
I don't think that's right.
Well, it sounds right. It sounds Egyptian. The mummification chamber. And the lights go out. There's a storm.
Yeah.
And it's a one shot, just going round and round this.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to mention.
And with the girl, freaky face.
Nell.
Yeah. And the sort of shattering of glass and the weird parent who's there. The weird grandma.
It is so. That's not so much a horror scene as it is an absolutely gripping drama. I think that's instrumental in making a good horror, is that you need to care for these characters. We mentioned it earlier. And that continuous shot that you mentioned, I think they cut about twice in 20 minutes, and even then it isn't necessarily a cut where you'd be like, that's a cut, look at it, it's a straight cut. Like someone will walk in front of the camera and it'll reset.
You said just then about characters, you've got to care for them.
Yeah.
I think that probably is important for most stories, but Hereditary then did not care a single bit for the mom. Like she was really arrogant, and she seemed like she was the ceiling mom. She was like the one doing it all. That's why the dad suspected it was her.
I felt bad for him.
Yeah, I definitely felt bad for him. And maybe the kids as well. But you don't have to care for every character. You can still be really unsettled. Like, you can feel for a person just because they're in a terrible situation, not because, they've earned my love.
It's just relatability, really. Yeah. And it's putting yourself in someone's shoes.
That's why I like that, because not everyone is a good guy, not everyone is a hero that you can empathise to. So there'll be people who are similar to the mom, and that suddenly they can relate, and we can relate because we will also be in a situation when we act quite arrogant, and you're like, oh yeah, that'll be me. I'll be the one sort of paranoid. I'll be the one disbelieving, and still getting freaked out by it. It's brilliantly done. Who directed Hereditary?
Hereditary?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't think I'd ever...
I'm glad we do note making before we begin the podcast.
This isn't a planned thing, guys. We're rolling with it. You mentioned that you didn't feel bad for a lot of the characters, and these characters had flaws in Hereditary. Something that does that well is Annihilation. I feel like Natalie Portman Natalie Portman is extremely flawed in that. Like she's still a clear-cut protagonist.
Very selfish, though.
But she's selfish. She cheated, right? That's one of
Yeah,
she cheated.
But she didn't, because she thought he was dead / missing.
Flawed protagonist in Annihilation.
Annihilation, wonderful film. Again, it's a strange one, because they have a really not morbid, but really macabre song, Helplessly Hoping, Crosby, Stills and Nash, and they keep coming back to it. And I love that song so much. And it's bizarre because it isn't a sad song. It isn't a creepy song. It's just like this reoccurring bit, which is you sort of can just get comfortable with again. And then as soon as the song's gone, it's going to get freaky. So every single time that song plays, someone dies.
It's like a marker almost
like
in the narrative.
It's like The Woman in Black.
Like a point of disequilibrium.
Okay, I see what. Yeah, that makes sense.
If that would, obviously, like the whole Todorov narrative pyramid probably doesn't exist anymore with the amount of twists and turns you get, and like kind of non-linear.
It's like a twist and a twist most of the time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people don't they don't think it's a clever film. But yeah, I agree. I think it's
especially in horror. That's the thing. It's frowned upon if something looks simple because it's been done so much from way back, in things like The Shining or The Ring.
Which is why I really like A Quiet Place, because it takes it's a really unique form of horror.
It is
where
visceral.
Sound is the killer, and it doesn't need a big twist. It doesn't need anything like that. It's just a new threat which hasn't been seen before, so they don't have to do all these like, oh, that's really smart, and also like all along we were the ghosts. It's not doing anything like that, just because they're focusing entirely on a new feature, not storytelling.
Yeah,
and it is brilliant story still, but it is also a really horrific film, and it's one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
It is
at the same time.
Did you see it in the cinema? Yeah, that's tough. It is tough, and it makes you work for the dialogue that you get. Well, you didn't get dialogue, but you know what I mean. It makes you work.
There's like 3 pages for the entire film.
Literally, it makes you work for human interaction, because that's what humans crave. They want to see people being okay. They want to see people being safe, and they're not safe because no one is talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an excellent use of your senses. I think it's probably does that kind of thing a lot. The Hush is another one that I think is
nice.
quite. I think
Sound.
Hush is quite strong with sound.
Mm.
It's quite short, isn't it?
Quiet Place is really short, and so is Hush.
Yeah, they both are.
Yeah.
Which goes to show there must be limitations to that kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
I think that's quite
much you can do with sound.
With sound, yeah. But I think what they do with it, they
it.
make it to the potential.
So I've only seen A Quiet Place once, and I'm worried about watching it the second time. Such as films such as the Blair Witch Project. The first time I saw that, absolutely terrified. I couldn't go in the woods for the next month. But I watched it a second time. One of the worst horror films I've ever seen. Because I knew exactly what was going to happen. Yeah, the original. There are like 3 spin-offs now.
Have you seen the remake?
And a
remake, but like it's a sequel, but like
not very good. It's like students, aren't they, going into the woods to look for their brother or something? Yeah, and they find the house. It's just like tunnels. It was okay, but lost my point. Anyway, very scary. Another brilliant thing A Quiet Place does is it's a family movie. It's about family and how far you would go to protect your family.
Yeah.
And
for a lot of people, that's pretty
hard.
fucking far.
Yeah. I think the average viewer is going to have a family, or at least someone in the family who loves them and they love. And that is something that's like, it's like the last bastion. Like if a horror film is playing on that, you know it's hitting you somewhere deep. I really was devastated. Like you said, it's a short film, but over the hour that John Krasinski's in it, you're so attached to him, and then his scream,
because he's
one of the worst moments in film. Like
I think it's very
killed me.
It gives me a kind of heroic. It gives me the idea that it's more heroic than anything else, because it's it's very euphoric. It's very cathartic when he does that, because that is the emotion that everyone's been wanting to let out.
Well, he's sacrificing himself for the daughter who thinks she's unloved.
Yeah.
He says, he goes, "I love you." He signs, "I love you," and it just broke my heart. Floodgates were open. He was good.
He was good in that. Jim.
Acted, written, directed. He was good.
Did he? Direct?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I would also like to point out the special guest we had earlier, who we bigged up so much for her film knowledge, tried to turn up the silence on that film when we were watching it. It was apparently too quiet. Anyway.
Right at the start, when it's literally establishing the premise of a quiet.
Your very limited amount of followers knowing this information.
Just wait till we have hundreds of thousands.
Then you're gonna get lynched.
Your Twitter's gonna be spammed. Right.
Just not the Twitter. Yes. I agree.
Quiet Place.
A Quiet Place. I think we can both agree that's top 3 horror film.
No, that's my top. That's number 1.
First one.
It wasn't for a long time, but it was, as soon as I started in the...
It's a good measuring stick, isn't it?
I was like, yeah, it has to be.
It's a good measuring stick.
It's so different and so terrifying. The same with It. It is a brilliant film. What, you may ask?
The original.
It is a great film. The original.
The one with Finn Wolfhard.
And very well CGI'd Pennywise. Like the Wolfman side of it, when he had the claws, and the teeth were brilliant.
I thought spider legs.
They look crap, but the spider legs as well. The really tall flute player, all the apparitions that he turned into, all the forms of fears that he turned into, were bloody terrifying. I still can't look at paintings the same way ever since I've seen that flute player in the. That's
a good example of a film using its budget, like a horror film using its budget to get scares. A lot of the time, they'll just turn up the volume, go bang. That's it. Do you know what I mean? Like, bang, there's a jump scare.
I think it's the name of the film. You have to put some effort into the main. That's the evil. The evil
is whatever it is. Something
I hate to play the book card, but I actually read the book first.
Oh, of course you did. Why wouldn't he have done? Because every podcast we've done, he's read the Black Mirror book, if you remember that.
They don't exist.
Exactly, they probably do.
I'll write them and read them.
If they do, you've read them.
If they do, if it's a book, I've read it. Anyway, the book is brilliant, and it goes on for so long. It's like hours and hours of reading, but it is also really in depth. Bit strange towards the end. The kids do some crazy stuff in the tunnel, but
They have an orgy, right?
I can't wait for part 2 as well. It comes out soon. Yeah, they do.
It's grim.
But it's that the book focuses more on it playing on the evil that's already inside humans, and the film you don't really get to see that much. You see
it's not so much a theme.
some evil characters, definitely,
like the bully.
the racist bully, yeah. But it is really terrifying. And clowns, for some reason, they've captured the entire world. Like clowns,
they're one of the thing where everyone's like,
is it
"Oh,
the
I
innocence
don't like
thing?
clowns."
Is it because they're meant to be fun and happy?
They're supposed, but
they're always not. The same with like children in horror films.
They're
meant to be
over
fun and
zealous,
happy,
aren't they?
but they're always not. They're always used as like a haunted, possessed demon thing.
Oh, it's because people feel safe with children. Everyone
It's an attack on your childhood.
Well, what it would boil down to is a lot of people think they're on this earth to conceive a child and to reproduce, and to have that jeopardized on screen for them and be like, this thing that you've wanted your whole life is evil. It's evil. It's the one thing that's going to turn against you and kill you, which is what the kid does in It, right? He kills his dad.
Hard hitting.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Not the kid, but the bully. Yeah, it is very, very hard hitting as a film, and I think it uses kind of the children aspect of it quite well as well, because everyone's got a gang of mates, and it's kind of that bond and that fellowship.
The orgy in the tunnel.
The orgy in the tunnel.
I cannot wait for part 2. It looks really good.
It does look really good.
James McAvoy.
The teaser is good.
When it's in the house with the naked dancing grandma.
Naked dancing grandma, yeah. It is good. It's. I'm excited for it. I just like the charm of it's effectively Stranger Things in more of a horror setting.
Should we talk about that? Because it is
Stranger
horrific.
Things.
The first episode of Stranger Things,
yeah,
really terrifying.
Yes.
When he's being stalked and
it's like a classic slasher.
Yeah, but it's a throwback to so many of those like first encounters with the monster or the killer.
Yeah.
There are so many films where that happens, where there's like a kid and it's slowly approaching and the tension's building, but you never see the attack. He just disappears. He's just taken to the upside down.
Yeah.
It's excellent. I love Stranger Things. And throughout it maintains a really creepy vibe, even though it's funny, it's charming.
Light-hearted.
It's light-hearted, but still creepy.
Yeah.
The upside down is generally terrifying.
It is, because it's hell without saying it's hell, isn't it?
They called it the Nether to begin with. That's what it's called in all the working scripts.
Is it really?
We all know that. Minecraft. That's hell in Minecraft. That's a scary game.
It is. The thing is, for Stranger Things, it uses alien references a lot as well, and it uses in its horror. It uses references and intertexts rather than original ideas. But that's part of its charm, is because it isn't original. It's an amalgamation.
Well, all of that advertisement work for it were all the posters. They did loads of mock posters, with like the Jaws type poster.
The Terminator one with Hopper, right?
Yeah,
that's good.
They had a couple of Alien posters.
Excellent.
And other classic.
Yeah, there's an alien one with the upside down, isn't there? Yeah.
Very spooky.
Very super spooky. I want to talk very quickly about things that you wouldn't necessarily recognise as horror, and to the point where I mentioned this and brought this up, some people didn't think it was a horror, such as Gerald's Game, the Netflix film.
Oh, it is horrific.
It's
like a situation that
people may find themselves. No, it's just unfortunate. It's a ridiculous turn of luck that leads to some horrendous things, and it's the horror is how far will your mind torture you, and that's the real horror of this. Has got extremely intense. This podcast.
I know.
I'm not gonna sleep tonight.
There's no sleeping.
It's how far your mind will go to torture you, and what your mind will bring up in them situations. You see, like, what happened to her when she was younger and she was abused. You see,
I think it's less about horror and it's more about character. Like, it's all about this one person's mind and their life and their feelings and their emotions. And the horrific moments in it are with the man with a box of teeth and the weird eyes.
Yeah.
Don't know what he's called in the film, but it's to do with like the sun. There's always symbols of the sun whenever he's around for some reason, like the setting sun.
That's
in
a
his eyes.
legitimately scary monster. It is. That's terrifying. And I don't think I want to dwell on it too long because he is
behind me.
Yeah, he's terrifying. He is terrifying. It's difficult to explain as a horror film because the setting. What I think it boils down to in that is that moment that people fear isn't necessarily death itself they fear. It's the moment before death. And what that film feels like is the moment, the couple of seconds before death,
being trapped in limbo.
Hours, before death, being consolidated.
What happens in the end?
120.
How does she get herself out?
She slits her wrist.
Oh.
Do you remember? She didn't die.
Yeah.
Do you remember? But she uses it as lubricant to slip.
Oh yeah.
She
breaks the glass.
Shit. It's so bad. But like, it's that flash before you die that is stretched out for an hour and a half, and it's pain, it's fear, it plays on human emotions as well, and it's a different type of horror.
It's really like tribal because it's got the whole dog eating the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
He bites his arm off and like nibbles it and takes it away.
Yeah, and she's like, no, don't do that.
And that's like, you know,
Chekhov's
primal.
dog.
It's like taking you back to like caveman versus beast. And she's just like completely trapped and she has no defense at all. It's taking us back to the time when we were trapped in caves because there were things that are fiercer than we were.
Yeah.
And it's playing on those really like deep buried emotions and like instincts, those animalistic instincts.
It's something that you don't think will ever come out.
Because humans are, you know, we're always generally in every situation, we're the ones in control. Unless you come up against another human who's got more power than you. Like we're in the animal
top
world.
of the food chain. Right?
Yeah, top of the food chain.
That's the thing.
Unless you're face to face with a bear, which is pretty scary. I can tell you little experience in Canada. It's not good.
He went to Canada.
Oh God, they know I've been to Canada.
Oh God, it's getting triangulated. On that.
Closer and
closer. We've been going for a bit now. I want to mention a film that we've not planned to mention this beforehand. Have you seen Secret of the Marrowbone?
No.
It has. It is tight, isn't it? It is a tight film. It has Jonathan from Stranger Things in it. It has a very good cast, and I'm not going to spoil it for you now. But what that does is play on ghosts excellently, and that's something that's a very horror trope is ghosts, haunted houses.
Did you watch Ghost Stories on Netflix?
Ghost, the one with Martin Freeman.
Yeah, really good. You didn't think it was?
I think it's scary. I think it's very artsy.
But that again, that played on ghosts. That played on the whole idea of, you know, all these hauntings.
Ghost
it was all in his mind. It was guilt. And
everyone's heard a good ghost story,
yeah.
right? And
come down my tour, I'll give you a good ghost story. Oh no.
It's getting worse. It is getting worse. I think what we've mentioned a lot over the past half hour or so is that you can imagine yourselves in these situations. You can imagine
relating.
You relate to them. You can imagine.
Imagination. It's all imagination. It's, you know, it's every single time the camera pans, it's the fear of what's there. It's every single time a light's turned on, it's the fear of what's in the shadow. Every time a note is played, it's the fear of what's making that sound.
It's our want to be comfortable as human beings, and that's what horror takes away most of the time.
Strips you down.
It puts you in a position where a lot of different things don't, because as awful as these situations are, average human beings do not experience them. Sometimes.
My parents have ghost stories. They say they swear they've seen ghosts. And you know, it can't be a phenomenon that it's not a big conspiracy that everyone's making up these ghost stories. Maybe it is just the mind and grief playing tricks, but you know, there are millions of people who have these stories. It makes sense that there is something, and because there's that idea that everyone has a ghost story, it makes it more real.
Yeah.
And even the films where it's demons and the further, like in Insidious, that because, you know, you go from ghosts to demons to hell. That those little steps, it makes it more realistic. Oh, not realistic.
It
more
makes
believable.
it makes it feel more organic than you're just hell. Speaking of hell, very quickly, they're doing a Passion of the Christ too.
What, Jesus' resurrection?
Yeah. Genuinely. Anyway, well, that's a good note to end the podcast.
Praise the Lord.
Have we mentioned everything we wanted to about horror? Because I know that it's a very broad genre, and a lot of the
we're
time
trying to give a little snapshot on our opinions and our favourites.
There's a lot to speak about, and I think we did mention Stranger Things. I want to do a Stranger Things podcast at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think those are the things that we mentioned. So, Insidious, Haunting of Hill House, Gerald's Game, Hereditary, A Quiet Place, Annihilation, It, Secret of the Marrowbone, Hush. They're all films that I think they're what we think represent horror in its different forms.
Mm-hmm.
And
really good films as well.
Really good
There's some really trashy horror films which we didn't want to talk about.
Like the Slender Man movie. That's the worst film I've ever seen. It. That is hands down the worst film I've ever seen. No, Last Airbender.
Bye Man. It's not a horror film.
No, that is the worst film
The Last Airbender?
Yeah, it's horror. It's horrific.
Ever since you were born, I knew you'd be a bender. That's a quote. You can quote the film on that. Before we wrap up, if you were to film... I was about to plug some merch then for some reason, but if you were to film / direct or write any horror film, first of all, where would you set it? Second of all, what sort of type of film would you keep it to the norms of horror, or would you try and make it fancy?
Let's try to see if we could subvert it.
Yeah, and third of all, who would be your main actor? Who would you cast? Who would you like to see in a horror film? Someone who you might have seen before.
I would, for a setting... I like the idea of open spaces. I don't think that that's played enough with a lot. So, like, say a field, maybe a warehouse, something that the eye can see with no obstructions. I think that's quite an interesting thing to play off, because then you can say, they might hallucinate, they might see different things, or, for example, they might be, so confident that nothing can come for them. So
yeah. Or
what
about the ocean? Not to do with sharks or anything, but like ghosts on the ocean.
So say you're stranded at sea. I like that. Stranded at sea.
And like your sailing boat isn't not the sailing boat's haunted, but
your engine's broke.
Yeah. So something around the boat.
Maybe a cruise ship. That'd be quite interesting. It feels tacky.
Yeah.
It feels tacky.
It feels like Scooby-Doo.
If you were to do it, or Sweet Life on Deck.
No.
And what was the second one? So you said setting.
Setting. What sort of film would you make it?
Sort of film. So I like the idea of the sea. Now you've mentioned it, the sea or a field, and I'd have it as like kind of an inner turmoil.
Yeah. So in the end, it's not about demons. It's about
the humans. The humans kind of
history. Yeah.
I like the idea of tying history into something as well. Maybe perhaps the field is an old battlefield. Do you know what I mean? And
they're above the sunk Mary Rose.
The Mary Rose.
There we go.
Or is it?
The old Mary Rose, at least. They never dredged the old.
So I think a field, history,
and actor who would you like to see in a horror film? Maybe you haven't seen before, or someone you have, like Martin Freeman. I think is brilliant in horror. Have you seen
quite a good choice.
Have you seen? Oh, I've forgotten the name. Cargo. Zombie movie with Martin Freeman.
That's excellent.
Really good.
I forgot about that film.
You know the boat? That's when you said sailing boat, I was imagining that with the creak in the door.
Yeah.
When he goes to get something and his wife goes and she goes, I hate that so much. That made me really scared. Then just saying cracking the door.
It's like God of War. that film.
Anyway, actor.
It is actor. It is a tough one.
Mine would be Martin Freeman.
Would it really?
Yeah,
if you had to choose. Sticking with, I think Benedict Cumberbatch could do Terrified really well. I think it's a.
Oh yeah, I saw him in
Perhaps Chris Pratt, because he has such a comforting presence. Seeing someone like that in distress would hurt.
I feel like he's too nice. Yeah.
Steve Carell, that would hurt.
Oh.
That would really hurt. How about Martin Freeman for you? Would you say?
Definitely Martin Freeman. I'd make it a classic horror film like Insidious. It would need to be, it would need to have jump scares. Ghosts. It would need to have terrifying music. I wouldn't overdo it, but I'd love to direct or even like be an extra in one of these films where it's truly terrifying. And the audience sort of know what's coming, but that makes it worse because they expect it. And then the occasional subversion just to keep people on their toes, maybe. And then setting wise, I'd really like to set a horror film in like the Alaskan tundra, so it's just like all whited out like snow. So there's a book called Dark Matter, if any of our listeners have read it. Brilliant book, and it's set in the Arctic winter when it's dark all day and all night.
That's good.
And
There's a town town called Barrow where they have like 24-hour nights.
Is it because it's in a valley?
No, it's because it's like in the Arctic
too
Circle.
high up. That makes sense. Yeah, it's somewhere in the Arctic Circle and in this like white wilderness. I think will be amazing.
And then
wolves could play into it, stuff like that.
Like The Grey, but good.
Yeah.
The one with Liam Neeson.
Or Frozen, not the Disney one, the one where they're stuck on a chairlift and they have to climb down. You've never heard of that film, have you?
No.
Oh my god, we're watching that film. It's one of the worst films in existence, but it's like a horror set on a ski lift.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Not in a ski, it's like a chair. It's like one of the open chairs.
Oh.
And they're stuck. That's the premise.
That's
Spoilers, they all die.
Do they?
Actually, no, they don't.
They don't. Final girl theory. Is there one girl that
Yeah,
survives? Is
Final
that?
Girl,
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to our horrific opinions.
End.
Bang! No good night, sweet princess.
No, we love horror. We are actually passionate about it as a genre, and I hope we've covered it. We are both kind of tired, but we've done well. Yeah. I feel like we've done well, and I hope you've enjoyed it yourself. Listening.
Thanks for listening along.
Right in our ears.
Please continue to send in your comments. We've got some lovely comments on the past few videos so far.
We really have,
including Bing Bang's
Bing Bang
experimental short film.
Oh god, what a short film!
Watch out for a collab in the future between animator and ourselves. Might happen, might not.
It should be over this 40-minute audio. It's just going to be Bing Bang doing
Bing Bang doing his weird life was started as a child.
That's not Bing Bang. That's a narrator.
No one has any thought of going on about.
I feel bad for Bing Bang.
YouTube search experimental short film baby.
The least we can do is plug it. Yeah. At this point. So this has been fun.
This has been actually a lot of fun. Stay creeped out is all I've got to say to you. Keep watching horror films. Enjoy that feeling of being terrified.
And you have fun in Italy.
Oh, Jack, that's so kind. Right, well, this is Jack and Joe and the JPOD wishing you a good night, sweet princess.
Good night, sweet princess.
And, party on.